I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on February 11, 2026 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukowski, Chair of the School Committee, and I want to welcome everybody here tonight. A reminder that this meeting is being video and audio recorded. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I just want to make mention that tomorrow night's DCC meeting has been changed to location from Raleigh to Triton. And in addition, at our March 5th DCC meeting in Salisbury, I've invited our 3 legislators to attend, and they have all accepted. The next item is a portrait of a learner. I'm so happy to welcome students tonight from Salisbury Elementary School, the 3rd of our 5 schools and 5 roles of our Portrait of a Learner being celebrated this year. This month, we celebrate students who exemplified the January Portrait of a Learner role focus, which was collaborator. I'll turn this over to Michael Estuccio, the principal of Salisbury Elementary School. And Mrs. Keeler, the assistant principal.
There we go. Thank you for having us this evening. We're excited to recognize some Salisbury Elementary students as Students of the Month. As Linda just described, the character trait that we were working on for the past month was collaborator. So at Salisbury Elementary School, once a month, we get our students together for differentiated assemblies, one for students in K through 2 and one through students in grades 3 through 6. And during those assemblies, we introduce the character trait that we will be focusing on for the month. We talk about concrete examples that the students will be able to show in their daily lives at school, and we introduce to them the I can statements that are also differentiated for those developmental levels. Throughout the month, we then make daily announcements that remind students of one way they can show that character trait each day at school. Teachers work on optional activities, sometimes through buddy classrooms, sometimes just in their own rooms, to help the students practice that character trait. And all month long, our staff are on the lookout for students who are doing an exceptional job exemplifying those I can statements and showing the character trait of the month. Our typical practice is that at the end of that month, we get together to recognize one student from each classroom as a student of the month, but we are happy to be here today to recognize 3 of our students as district students of the month here at School Committee. Anything to add, Mrs. Keeler?
Nope.
All right, so we are going to begin with our student of the month from the K to 2 grade level, and this student is Waylon Jankowicz. Waylon, do you want to come on up? And as he joins us, I'm going to tell you about some of the nice things that Waylon's teacher, Miss Markham, wrote about him and his collaboration. Miss Markham wrote, "Waylon always works with others as a team, whether it is building with tiles, at his table group, or learning within the classroom. He shares his ideas confidently, but he is willing to listen to what his peers have to say to find an agreement. Waylon is encouraging to all his classmates, often getting just as excited for his friends when they succeed with claps, high fives, and words of encouragement. His positivity and his ability to work well with and collaborate with his peers is why I nominate Waylon Jankowicz for Student of the Month." Congratulations, Waylon. Sure. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Keeler, who's going to tell you about our next Student of the Month.
Put that down a little bit. Okay. This next student represents our grades 3 and 4 band. And we'd like to congratulate Abigail May Kennedy Janvren. Want to come up? Abigail is an outstanding collaborator and a valued contributor to our classroom community. She works well with her classmates, listens respectfully to others' ideas, and shares her own thoughts in a positive and thoughtful way. During group work, she is supportive, patient, and always willing to help the team and her classmates succeed. Her positive attitude and teamwork help create a classroom where everyone feels included and encouraged to do their best. Congratulations, Abby.
Okay, last but most certainly not least, our representative from the 5th and 6th grade level is Ariana Pease Ormsby. Ariana, do you want to come up? So Ariana is in the 5th grade, and Mrs. Donovan and Mrs. Lewis had the following to say about Ariana and her collaboration. Ariana consistently shows what it means to be a strong collaborator in our 5th grade classrooms. Across math, CKLA, science, social studies, writing, and specials, Ariana shares her ideas in a respectful way and truly listens to the thoughts of others. Ariana helps create a classroom where everyone feels comfortable, participating, and valued. When working with classmates, she's willing to compromise, solve problems together, and learn from others while also helping others to learn from her. She is a positive, supportive team member in every setting. Congratulations. Yes, yep. So we're going to do a group photo. Students and families, right? Want to be in it? Yes, families welcome for our Students of the Month, and congratulations, everybody.
And as much as I would like all of you to stay, please don't feel like you have to stay. Except Mr. Estuccio.
I was going to say, just as a reminder, so we had Pine Grove, was it Pine Grove that, Pine Grove kicked it off, and then we had the middle school in November and December, and then Salisbury tonight, and then we have the high school next month, and Newbury Elementary in April, still to celebrate, so just to make sure everyone knows that's coming.
The next item is oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee? Mr. Cullen?
Good evening, and my statement would be a little more somber than
Just state your name and
Bernie Cullen, 283 Weathersfield Street in Rowley. So my statement here will be a little more somber than the celebration we just had for the 3 very deserving students from Salisbury Elementary. The first thing I want to mention is that I'm the chairman of the Rowley Water Board, and each year we have to take the Ethics and Conflict of Interest program. One of those requirements is that nobody on the board should be making judgments or inputting into decisions where they have a personal or family interest in making those decisions. My understanding is that there are members of this committee who, in fact, do not meet that requirement, and they should recuse themselves from any decisions or any discussion of items which actually impact themselves or their immediate family members. And I take that after discussions with our town administrator that this is a significant issue, and I expect some change to take place in how these discussions take place. Second thing is the budget. My understanding is there was a very civil discussion this week at Rowley looking at our financial situation. It is severe. It was severe last year. We kind of finessed it with the override. The odds of that another override passing this year is basically slim and none. We got a lot of pushback in town because of that override. I did not say anything about the override because I saw it as essential to fund the overnight police force, the overnight firefighters that we desperately needed in town. But my concerns with the Triton budget were the same last year as they are this year, and that there is a structural ongoing deficit where you can basically predict that the Triton budget will be going up between 5 and 6% in aggregate, top line. I don't care about the Rowley contribution. That's a completely separate issue. It's the overall budget that's of concern. I've shared some analysis that I've done. I handed the copies to Linda. The fact of the matter is Triton is far more heavily staffed than the benchmark that I would use, which is Pentucket, to the tune of 60 staff members for a school that is of similar size. So again, I appreciate the fact that this new budget has been reduced significantly, and that there appear to be
3 minutes.
Appear to be significant staff cuts. But a lot more needs to be done because we're looking at exactly the same situation next year. That's without seeing what's in the new contract. I can't see it being addressing the structural problems that exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Just state your name and the town that you're from, please. You can hold on to it if you want to.
I feel like Ryan Seacrest, and I don't really like that. Yeah, thanks. My name's Leslie Curran. I'm from 68 Pearson in Newbury, Byfield. So I'm taking a different stance than the previous speaker. I do not want the school committee to propose a budget with so many cuts and not even keeping level services. That is something that should be brought to the voters of the town. That decision should not be made here. Voters should have the opportunity to vote for that, as we did quite strongly last year. And so I don't think that this is the point in the process where that many cuts should be proposed. We've already cut so many things in the past year that, that perhaps were deemed unnecessary, like a STEM educator or a socio-emotional learning educator. And now what I'm seeing is classroom teacher, classroom teacher, classroom teacher. And all that's going to do is make bigger classes. I do not think Pentucket is the benchmark that we should be going for. That's all I'll say about that. And so I'm just here to advocate for at least giving voters the opportunity to exercise our voice on that. And just following up on the initial comment about the composition of the committee, I don't know the bylaws there. I hope that would be an open discussion, because my understanding of democracy is that we can vote for anyone who is eligible to be on the school committee, regardless of who might be in their family or whatever was referenced. And in fact, I want my school committee to be full of people with a strong vested interest in our schools, just like I want senior citizens to have a voice in how we fund our senior centers, et cetera. I don't think we should be excluding the precise demographic that is served from decisions that are made. That seems backwards to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
See how this goes. My name is Chester Mignanti. I'm from Newbury. Did not really prepare to speak tonight, but just, based on what Leslie just said, I agree that, the fact that we haven't seen the level services budget, the fact that it hasn't been brought to the taxpayers, let us make that decision. I mean, the overrides, there's a reluctance to get into the overrides. I understand that, but, they passed convincingly last year because you let the taxpayers have a say in what the education was going to look like in their towns. Additionally, I just want to say that the way things have been trending, I don't see that the macro issues that are driving the budget up every year are going to change dramatically in the next 5 years or so. So it's like, if we're going to keep doing this every year, we're going to keep cutting continuously. That really does start to, it already has impacted the experience of the students. And if you keep doing this year after year, it's like, what is going to be left of Triton in 5 years? What's going to be left of Triton in 10 years? Hey, we're going to have a new building. That's going to be great. But it's like, who's going to be here? There's significant attrition happening already. And I think you all need to recognize that. So I think that's all I had to say. Yeah, I had one other point, and now I'm forgetting it. Foster, do you remember what I was going to say? No?
Escaped my mind.
Just thinking for a second here. Yeah, I guess that was it. Sorry, like I said, I was not really preparing in advance for this, but next time I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brett Elger. I live at 71 Pearson Drive in Byfield, across the street from Leslie. Our kids go to NES, and I am on the board of the PTA. I want to start by summarizing the comments I made at last year's town meeting. Public schools are the most important building in any single small town. They are the largest building, they require the most maintenance, they employ the most people, and host most of the town's events, including public meetings. On top of functioning as a school, Triton students will become our teachers, our public safety workers, they'll start local businesses. They will be the local professionals that repair your roof, that fix your cars, that provide your medical care. Triton High School will go on every graduate's college or job application. Newbury, as has already been referenced, overwhelmingly passed an override last year, and we hired new teachers and other staff for a school year that started 6 months ago. And yet I'm looking at a draft budget that cuts some of those very people. And the cuts made 2 years ago, as Leslie referenced, have become an afterthought at this point. I believe our process needs urgent yet long-standing improvements. Brian and you all are forced into starting from a floor and grasping for resources. I think that our school buildings and our kids deserve a process that identifies all needs in a budget that delivers a ceiling to the select board of all 3 towns. I do not discount the broken promises of the state in Chapter 770 funding, nor am I cheering at the front of the line at increasing taxes without a plan. But I'm embarrassed that people celebrate our low tax rates, and I'm tired of the term override being used as a scare tactic. or that we can only have improved services or a new school building, but not both. We should be able to walk and chew gum. Brian and the school committee members, I don't envy your roles and the extremely difficult choices and position that you're in each and every year. You can't even make lemonade with what you're provided. I appreciate your hard work and your dedication to supporting the next generation of Triton graduates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Liz Pease. I live on Meters Lane in Salisbury. I'm relatively new to the Triton district, though I've lived in Salisbury for over a decade. My daughter was one of the children recognized here tonight. So you can see it's been a very positive experience that we've had at Triton. You can ask Mr. Forget later about how I basically interviewed him before I decided to send my kids here. I watched the last, just before I came here, watched the last meeting, the budget information, and I understand and appreciate the idea of right-sizing things, and that, you know, that feels okay to me. But this notion that the budget should never go up is ridiculous. I mean, any of us, I haven't gotten a raise in years because my company's costs just keep going up and up and up. It's not unreasonable to think that a budget is going to go up. I mean, we all know the cost of living goes up, the cost of everything goes up, nothing goes down. And agreed that I think that setting our bar as, or setting the bare minimum as our bar is a pretty pathetic thing, and it's just sad. It's not fair to our kids, as this last gentleman very eloquently said. These kids are our future. I mean, the idea that we wouldn't invest everything we possibly could in them is insane to me. So I understand it's never going to be easy, and it's never going to be, everybody can have everything they want all the time. That's just not the way of the world. And if there are budget cuts that can be made to right-size things, then that's fine. But I do strongly, strongly urge no further cuts. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're about the same height. Salisbury Selectman Michael Colburn, most of you guys know me. I would have held off till tomorrow at our DCC meeting, but potentially you guys might be taking a vote. I want you to know where I stand on this. First off, I fully support you guys as a committee and as a staff. You guys are all subject to the open meeting laws and all the other exams that we all have to take too. So to make a suggestion, and it's shame on if a town administrator made a suggestion that you guys are not being faithful. Well, I would implore that the school administration contact our lawyers on that matter, because it's slander. You can't make allegations unless you know it's true, and that I don't feel that's true with either one of you. And I think the town of Raleigh should have to pay legally for that, if that's true. Second, I want to hear, you know, I have sent Brian and Linda many emails from parents in the town of Salisbury. I have talked to our administration in our town, and I also have talked with other town officials. We support your budget. We have already concerns that there is cuts, but Brian, we trust you. We trust your administration staff, and we trust the school board to make the best decision for our kids. So I'm here to say, Salisbury supports you. We understand it's going to be tough for other communities, but at the end of the day, we know for the past 5 years this was going to happen. We all each town makes a choice in how we decide how we govern our people. Brian, you've been very clear to me as a selectman in the town of Salisbury. Linda, your board has been very clear to me how this was going to be affected. We all have choices that we make, and we all have to live with the choices that we make. Town of Salisbury supports you guys in improving this budget.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Thank you. The next item is the student representative report. I'd like to invite Student Representative Foster Campbell to present his monthly report.
Hello, everybody. So starting off with the school report, with shadowing, I know Mr. Kelly talked about this earlier about kind of getting to know the students' personal experiences. I've been seeing it going to effect with teachers, going around second half of the day, seeing what the students are experiencing. I just wanted to know what's going on. Quarters have recently switched, so kids are now settling into their new classes. For me, I'm going in like gym, coming from a VTV class. And going towards the topic of budget cuts from a student perspective, I think at the standpoint of what we have in our school, we already do cut a lot, and you can see it, although it's hard to see from an outside perspective, but you hear from your siblings or other people like there is a lot missing, or that we used to not have. Like, as a student, there's constantly fundraisers going on, which is fine that there's fundraisers, but not actually, but I can name at least like 3 fundraisers going on that we constantly need to fund for, which is fine. It's a good experience to learn how to fund, but it can be tough with not a crazy budget. For sports, we also have girls' senior night tomorrow night. That's about as much as I can remember because I forgot my Chromebook and I have it on my phone.
Thank you, Foster. Does anybody have any questions for Foster? The next item is the SES Playground fundraising. I would like to take a few minutes,
Or are you going to go?
Huh?
Did you miss the consent agenda? Or do you want to?
I didn't consent. So we're going to do the consent agenda. Sorry, I scrolled down. The consent agenda contains 2 donations tonight. Thank you to the Paddle Inn, a restaurant that hosted a fundraiser for Triton Middle School's 8th grade trip to Philadelphia and raised $750, and to the Triton Education Foundation and Triton Music Parents Organization for a system valued at $3,000 that will allow students to run theater, lighting, sound, and projection applications for projects and shows. There are no overnight or out-of-state field trip permissions request on this month's agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the new business. Would any members of the committee like to raise new business to be discussed in a future meeting? Seeing none. Now we have the Salisbury Elementary School Playground fundraising. I would like to take a few items out of order to be respectful of the time of the presenters here tonight. Unless the committee objects, I propose taking the Salisbury Elementary Playground item with Principal Estuccio, followed by 2 middle high school project items next, since the representatives from the owner's project management firm are here. Are there any objections? Okay, Mr. Estuccio? And Mrs. Keeler?
So just as he's settling, and just as a reminder, this request came to you last year, right? That wasn't earlier this fall. I think it was the end of last year. And there was some confusion around, there is some confusion, right? It is a confusing process because the town of Salisbury owns the building, and this would be a PTA effort. And so we worked with the town of Salisbury to make sure that we've confirmed how this process will work, and that it would be a PTA fundraiser that is basically gifting it to the school, and then as a district, we end up handing it back over to the town as it's their property. So in doing that, we had to make sure that we were coordinating with what the town, making sure that the town procedures and processes to make things available to the public, spaces and stuff like that, we were checking those boxes. So this is a return visit. Good to see you again, Michael. Now that we've made sure the brochure is updated to reflect that relationship.
Yeah, not too much else, I don't think, to share. As Brian, I want to thank Brian and Rich for all of their help with coordinating with the town and making sure that we're certainly following processes the way that they need to be followed so that everything is by the book. While, all of that was being arranged, we did take a second pass at the business flyer that we had previously presented, just to clarify the language on that flyer to make it clearer to any individuals, right, looking into it, where exactly those business advertisements were going to be, that was not going to be a school, promotion of that business, but a PTA promotion of that business in thanks for their sponsorship and in order to incentivize hopefully some donations to the project. So much of the information on the updated draft that you've reviewed is the same on that first page. So about our plan and about the company recognitions and contact information. There's not too much that's different there. A little bit of revision just to make things briefer and clearer. The major changes are on the business sponsorships panel, where we did clarify the language around where exactly any business logos or advertisements would be made, and that would be on the PTA, social media, right, PTA events, that sort of language. So those are the major changes. I believe last time there also was some questions just about the contact information, and our conversation, we had landed on leaving my name, my email, and the school number there so that I could connect any interested parties with the PTA, but that everything was flowing through the school flowing through school administrators so that we could, link those with the PTA that needed to be to kind of make that as clear as possible. So happy to answer any questions or address any concerns, but hoping that the updates we've made are clear enough for this to be approved so we can begin a business sponsorship push. And Mrs. Kaler, did you have anything to add?
No, but
Okay.
you did a nice job.
Can I just add one more clarification? It was a very nice job. So because it is a district PTA partnership, we are dealing with the procurement piece. So obviously this is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so the PTA and Michael and Jane and a whole group have done a lot of work interviewing different companies. And because the company chosen is on the state contract, that allows us to have a much more consolidated or condensed, I should say, procurement process. So that allows us to select a specific vendor working off the state contract. That way they can choose the one that is the most cost effective and is able to provide the design that they all want for the school.
Does anybody have any questions for Michael?
So I think we talked about this last time, and I can't remember what the answer was, but we have a policy about just the school committee is supposed to approve, name anything that's naming or logoed or anything like that. But then there was also confusion because we weren't sure what Salisbury had for policies for the same thing, and obviously this is sort of passing through multiple hands. Do we get any clarity on that? Does the school committee need to take a vote at some point down the road, or?
So it would not be a town issue if the school committee, and again, I think the committee can have that discussion. If it's ultimately a town-owned property, I think there's an argument to say that it's the town's and that it doesn't fall under the school committee since we're managing it, right? Since it's a district PTA partnership through to completion, there's an argument to say, yes, you should take a vote. And so I certainly think there could be a discussion as we head down the road. And right, if a big sponsor comes forward, that Michael and the team bring it to this committee just so there can be a public discussion and not, a kind of first right of refusal if it was someone whose name there was a concern with putting on it.
Fair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Jane. So you don't feel the need to approve that at all, correct? I don't think you do, but just, okay, great. We're good, yes. Thank you both. Thank you. Have a good night.
The next item is the MSBA project update, the OPM introduction. Thank you. I will hand the introduction for the MSBA project update over to the superintendent, and that will lead straight into the selection of one of the design review panel representatives.
So while they're making their way over to the podium, and then Anthony, if you want to grab that microphone on your way by. I'm going to introduce to you Joe DeSantis and Anthony Lepresti, project directors through PMA Associates. It's actually feels kind of funny and weird that we have an OPM. I feel like we've been talking about this process for so many years. And so this was a process conducted through the school building committee. Rich, as our procurement officer, managed this process. We had the ability to go through a ranking system or process, make an ultimate selection, and bring that selection to the MSBA for approval. So for the OPM selection, we make the decision, and then the MSBA basically, there's not even a vote, it's just a blessing, we'll call it, where they're presented at a meeting. They'll go over the kind of process today, just a quick overview, and talk through next steps. The goal is to introduce them. You're going to see a lot of them in the years ahead, as well as their team. But to introduce them, give you an update on where we're currently at, and then the next steps, as Linda said, is for the school committee to appoint one member of a designer selection panel, because that is a far more prescribed process, and we have seats at the table. It is not a choice we make. So with that, am I handing it to Joe?
That was perfect timing. You filibustered just long enough for me to get the slide up here, so thank you so much for that. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe DeSantis. I'm a senior director with PMA Consultants. Thank you very much. We are thrilled to be on board for the project. We know you have a full agenda tonight, so we're going to try to keep this relatively quick. Like Brian mentioned, we are going to give you kind of an abridged version of the building committee presentation that we gave a few weeks ago. So we're going to quickly introduce our team, give an MSBA process overview, as well as getting to the exciting part, which is the designer selection process, which is underway, which Anthony will speak to in a little bit. Our core team is shown here on this slide. Kevin Nagro is leading the project team. He's on vacation right now, but Anthony Lepresti and myself are kind of the North Shore faction of this team. You'll see a lot of us throughout the project. We have some of our other core members here as well, and some of the similar MSBA projects that we've worked on together in the past. Just here to show you, we put together a team for this project that is well suited. We have relevant experience, and we've worked well together previously. I'm not going to sit here and read every single one of these off to you, I promise, but I'll just quickly flash this here. You'll have these slides as a takeaway. If there's any of these projects that you see on this list, these are MSBA K through 12 projects that PMA has been involved with. If you have any questions about them, you've heard anything about them you want to talk about, please feel free to reach out. If it's not one of us here that was involved, then we know somebody who was. Getting into the MSBA overview. So the MSBA process is very prescriptive and detailed. There's a bunch of steps required to go from each one of these kind of boxes that I've oversimplified here in this graphic. What I will say, though, is that working with the MSBA is well worth it. Not only from a financial perspective, obviously the district has a huge amount of financial assistance to gain through working with the MSBA, but through this process, the end result is really a special building that is, whether new, renovated, combination, somewhere in between, that's custom tailored for what you guys need educationally if everyone's done our jobs right. And that's part of PMA's role, is to make sure the designer and everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Like I said, we've kind of oversimplified the whole process with this graphic, and we'll go through. We have a preliminary timeline reflected here. We don't have a designer on board yet, and we're speaking to these design milestones, but here's what PMA thinks makes sense for now. So right now we are in MSBA Module 2, forming the project team. We're halfway through with the selection of PMA as OPM. Thrilled to be here again. Designer selection is underway that Anthony will speak to shortly, and really that's when things get fun and exciting. We get into existing conditions of the building, educational planning. You guys are off to a fantastic start with that, between Habib and MLP. We commend you for your work on that. Time is money in these processes, as you will see as we plan out and getting to the construction cost estimating. We'll get into continuing the educational planning efforts and transforming those into the education plan and then into preliminary construction options. So the feasibility study process, really, that MSBA Module 3, we're going to look at over 10 different construction options. We're going to use a bunch of community feedback to come up with what's important when comparing those against each other. So evaluation criteria is what we commonly refer to that as. And then at the end of the feasibility study, we're determining the one construction option that we want to proceed with. And then we get MSBA approval, school committee and school building committee approval to do so, of course. We are targeting April 2027 for that, which we will then get into schematic design. The goal of schematic design is to get specific with that one option. So you have one construction option before. We're kind of looking at things on a cost per square foot basis. We don't have things really well defined, but throughout the schematic design process, we have rigorous meetings on mechanical systems, right? Structural systems, to the point where our construction cost estimators can put together really an intelligent estimate of what the project will cost. That will set our total project budget as well as our maximum MSBA grant. We're targeting finishing that around the end of 2027. Again, these are preliminary dates. And then we would get into seeking local funding approval in spring of 2028. So just want to highlight that date again, spring 2028 for local funding approval, which would then allow us to move forward with Module 6, a few more design submittals, construction, again, oversimplifying the whole process here with one little box that says construction, right? Close out, and then MSBA does a post-occupancy evaluation as well. Any questions on this before I move on? And I should have said before, please feel free to interrupt us, and I speak for Anthony as well, at any point throughout our presentation, mid-sentence. We're low ego players. Okay, I'll go on. So we can't come to school committee and not have a quick slide about the importance of education, educational visioning, and how that kind of drives the boat on these MSBA projects, right? So we are really thrilled to be getting to the point where we're bringing on the designer. They're picking up the ball and running with it from your work with MLP. And this slide just kind of a little oversimplifying again about what that looks like. So we'll get into educational visioning and wrap up that effort, determining project goals and requirements. In the eyes of the MSBA, we then work to provide what's called an education plan. Actually gets refined over multiple MSBA submissions, but it defines the teaching and learning experience at a new or renovated school. The education plan is the MSBA's rubric for judging everything we do from that point forward. Whether they'll participate in our spaces against their guidelines, it all comes back to the education plan, really every decision that we make. Space programming can then happen, so getting into meetings with the design team, talking about what types of spaces are needed, how many, how big they should be, what makes sense near what else, and then getting into space summaries and preliminary construction options. Anthony, I think at this point, can turn it over to you to get into the fun part.
Awesome. Yep. So, hi everyone again. I'm Anthony Lopresti with PMA Consultants. Been with PMA for about 10 years now and happy to be working on this project. So, like Joe said, he gave a great overview of kind of the whole MSBA process. I'll dive into the current step that Triton's in, which is the designer selection process. It's really getting the architect and their team on board and start that feasibility study. So 5 key steps here for the designer selection process. Developing the designer request for services. So we did that with Rich and Brian in early January, got that approved from the MSBA. That kind of set your advertisement date. Happy to report again today that we advertised today. So the RFS is on the street is how we'd like to call it, and design firms can request the documents, we send it to them. Next week, we'll have a walkthrough with the interested design firms, and then moving on to step 3 in March, design firms will submit a proposal to Triton. The designer selection subcommittee, it's really a smaller subset of the building committee, will review those proposals. PMA will also review those and do some statutory requirements. And we'll dive into this specific step a little bit more in a second here. But after that, you head to the MSBA designer selection panel, where 3 district Triton representatives will meet with the MSBA, and ultimately, step 5, select the right firm for the project. Thank you. Yeah. So preliminary review of designer submissions. So again, that's that step 3. It's after firms have submitted a proposal to Triton. That'll happen on March 11th. And then this smaller subset of the building committee, it's not the 3 representatives from Triton going to the MSBA. Those 3 representatives will be this selection committee from Triton. But the selection subcommittee will be a smaller subset that will review each firm's submission. PMA will perform the statutory requirements. We'll be checking that they're complete and adequate. we'll be doing the MSBA required matrix of design subconsultants, checking their team, making sure they have all the required consultant categories listed in the RFS, and performing reference checks and MSBA forms. We'll also take a look at these proposals, make sure that the district is well versed in being able to speak about each firm at the MSBA designer selection panel. Kind of go into that portion here. So the MSBA designer selection panel, that's what's going to happen in April for Triton. It's a date set by the MSBA. We've been targeting it and I've been staying on track. But the designer selection panel from the MSBA, it's made up of 16 equal votes, 13 of which are set from the MSBA and 3 of which are set for Triton. So the key thing to highlight here is, again, it's 16 equal votes. The MSBA obviously has a lot of say in which firm gets chosen for the project. And ultimately, like I said in the last slide, it's PMA's job to make sure that the 3 Triton representatives are well versed and knowledgeable about each firm that submits for the project, so that ultimately the best firm gets chosen, because there will be a dialogue and a back and forth with MSBA panel members about which firm should get chosen. Going to the next slide here, just on an overall timeline to put things in perspective. So we finalized the RFS and submitted that to the MSBA and got that approved in January. The advertisement for the RFS went live in February. We have a walkthrough next week at Triton with interested design firms on the 18th. We'll get proposals from design firms on March 11th. Then we'll do that month or so review, preliminary review with the selection subcommittee of the design firms. And then those 3 district representatives will be going to the MSBA designer selection panel on April 7th. Now at April 7th, depending on the number of firms that submit, as well as the discussion, you may get a designer chosen then and there. But also potential is to have to go back a second time and interview shortlisted firms. And then ultimately the best firm gets chosen at that meeting, and Triton will enter contract negotiations and hit the feasibility running at the end of April. So, and just to go back one slide here, back to the Triton representatives. So the 3 Triton representatives, those are the categories, as I think Brian talked about before we started our presentation, one of whom shall be designated by the school committee, and that's why we're here tonight. So I think that is about it for our presentation. Like Joe said, please ask us any questions. It's a lot of information at once. So if there's any questions or comments about this, please let us know.
So one more thing to add, excuse me, Kevin, along with Joe and Anthony, joined Rich and Matt and I on Weekly Scoop with the Soup. Of course, you all watched it. And so one of the things that just the question is, I think it's obvious, but to state out loud, right? So an owner's project manager, they are representing us as the entity. So you approved 1.7 million out of stabilization that you, in essence, gave to the building committee. So the building committee has allocated $450,000 for PMA to be our representative through the next 2 years through that town meeting vote. And then that leaves $1.25 million for the design work, which is engineering and designers to actually do the thinking and planning. But with engineers and construction experts as OPMs, they are the ones that keep the designers who want to design a certain way and the builders who want to build a certain way, to make sure that it all points back to that educational program in the vision that we ultimately set what we want for a building, not what they the designers or the builders want. So just to make sure that's clear in what the role is.
Thank you, Brian.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Right, that was easy. So that, thank you both, appreciate that. So as far as the selection, again, it's the superintendent or designee, it'll be me, the building committee will elect one person, and the school committee selects one person. You have 2 school committee members sitting, obviously Matt is the chair, and there's on the building committee as well. It could be them as committee members, or it could be another school building committee member. It could be another member of administration. So that's the discussion tonight about who ultimately the committee wants to appoint.
Make a motion to appoint Narissa to the designer review panel for the MSBA.
I second it. Yeah, because ultimately it was going to be one of them too, so.
Can I just ask Narissa, Is that something you're open to?
There's no questions.
I mean, yes, that's fine with me. Yes, okay. I always said, like, I don't need to be involved in every step, right? But if it's needed, because I do have a flexible schedule, and not everyone does, if that's a situation where, and then I'm happy to step up. I will make it work.
Well, it's not just your schedule we're after. It's the brain power with the schedule we're after.
I'll bring the
And-
brain on caffeine.
And not only that, Narissa has been through this process with Pine Grove.
Not this.
Not this?
No. So this was the town, Pine Grove is the Town of Raleigh project. So I don't even know who went. It would have been probably Joe Perry. Would have been you in the district.
Superintendent wasn't even involved.
Oh.
So, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So it was someone else. I don't know who it was at the time.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
So the building committee is meeting on February 26th, likely remotely. That's not next week, that's the week after break. And so then the building committee will select that third person. And again, just to reiterate one more time, I think you both said it, we're 3 of 16, right? There's 13 other MSBA and or mostly industry experts, architects, engineers, designers, that ultimately make the decision. So we get 3 out of 16 votes. And so the work of the OPM is to equip us as the representatives to make sure we can go in and on as after reviewing and all of that work with the design committee, the subcommittee, being able to speak articulately to those that we would prefer. So
you nailed it. We find that despite the vote disparity, that if our 3 representatives are well-spoken, the MSBA tends to listen. They may bring alternate information to the table that we weren't aware of. Hey, this firm just won 3 projects in a row with the same team. They can't possibly have that availability to give you this star PM who you love, that kind of a thing. But for the most part, in our experience, if our 3 reps are well-spoken on the firms that they like, and especially the firms that they didn't like, why they weren't as responsive to the RFS as others, we've walked out with a really good success rate in terms of our district's preferred designer leaving the meeting.
there are coaches in this. They don't get to say a word.
It's true.
And when it was in the room, you were literally like sitting 4 feet away from people, so. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
No, we voted.
That's what I told you to do.
The next item is the DCC meeting update. The notes from the last meeting of the District Communications Committee are attached in board docs. There's a lot of information in there, and I would welcome any additional comments from the members who attended or questions from those who did not. Okay, seeing none. The next item is the mid-year student attendance update. The Director of Student Services will provide the mid-year student attendance update.
Thank you. So this is the first year that we have been across the district implementing the attendance plan that we presented to you last spring. And I think we came back in this fall to present also. So I just want to highlight some of the things that the schools have been doing. This is the first year, since it's the first year across the district that we're implementing it, it's the first year that all schools are using an attendance tracker, which is a live, up-to-date, it's attendance data. So there's data on every student, how they're doing, how many days they've missed, interventions that are put into place. So schools are reviewing those weekly or bi-weekly. So overall, schools have noted that they're communicating attendance expectations consistently across the district. They're strengthening family communication. They find that because of the attendance tracker and because of the teams that are collaborating weekly, they're able to intervene earlier with students before they get to the Tier 2 or Tier 3 level. And that families are engaged and students are engaged in attendance and really improving their attendance or working with the school to accept supports that are needed. Newbury Elementary School, some of the things I'm highlighting tonight for Newbury is that sending out we have it's a 7-day letter that goes out to families, and it's just to let them know that their student has missed 7 days, that they're on the verge of, possibly going into the Tier 2 where they're at risk, and it lets families know that we're here, and if you need support or anything like that, reach out. So they're finding that that's increasing family awareness and families are reaching out for support. And then, as I said, the attendance is reviewed by the team, but the attendance trackers are reviewed by the teams, by a clinical team, and that 14% of the students have maintained perfect attendance for the whole school year. Schools are doing it by trimester or quarter. So if a student is unable to get perfect attendance in the first trimester, they have a chance to continue to do that. But NES wanted to highlight that right now 14% have been able to maintain that perfect attendance through the school year. They're going to continue, we're continuing at NES to focus on understand the purpose of the attendance letters. So when those are sent out, to work with families, so they understand that it's about support and it's about, working with them because if your student's not going to school, it's a struggle. So we want to make sure that they know, you're not alone. We have many supports to put in place. And they are also starting to look at some tardiness. So they're seeing some patterns of tardiness and how we can support families to get their students to school on time. Pine Grove, we're highlighting that 98.23% of their students are arriving on time. So they're seeing some improvement in their tardiness, their patterns that they saw for students who were tardy. That the first trimester, 66% of the students received perfect attendance letters. 66 students received perfect attendance letters. They also have noticed that including their nurse on the committee, so their nurse is part of the attendance committee, so they have been able to kind of look at the data and talk about why students are struggling with attendance and kind of put things into place. So often students who struggle with attendance visit the nurse. They often will have frequent visits to the nurse. So they've been able to reduce those frequent visits by putting the supports in place beforehand. And they're also finding that teachers, because of the attendance awareness and the letters that are going out, teachers are coming to administration and contacting families beforehand when they're seeing concerns with attendance or students that might be struggling. And they're going to continue to focus on just families who are taking extended vacations during school time, just working with those families, understanding the importance of being at school and how can we support to get those students to school. And they're also monitoring early dismissals. So early dismissals are something students are still missing school, so they're starting to dig into that also. Salisbury Elementary School, we're highlighting, okay, so last year at this time, of 8 chronically, so compared to last year at this time, 8 of the students that were chronically absent have improved their attendance this year. And 7 of those students their absences have been reduced by 8 to 18 days, which is huge. That's really great. They're finding that their families are really participating in the attendance meetings. So when we have meetings with families, we develop attendance plans and we talk about supports. So of the 7 families that have been invited, 6 of them have come in and met with the administration or counselors and really participated and collaborated with the school. They're also using, which we met the other day, and the other schools were like, oh, that's a great idea. They're using a visual calendar, sometimes a visual to just to talk with families and say, these are all the school days that your students are missing, and it helps to understand the impact of how many days are being missed. And then just more families are just reaching out to administration beforehand when their students start struggling with attendance, rather than just waiting for someone to call or send a letter. And they're going to continue to, though they're seeing a slight reduction in chronic absenteeism, they do realize, they're still going to continue to work with families and work on the tardies, the dismissals, and the chronic absenteeism. The middle school, we're highlighting an increased proactive communication by administration in the SST. So SST is the student support team. So they're, again, finding that because they're reviewing the attendance data so regularly, that they're able to really start to communicate with families early and be able to kind of step in and support. They also said that the 7-day letter is really helping with the awareness and with communication. The attendance plans they're developing, so when students are at the tier 2, there's an option to develop an attendance plan. When they hit tier 3, which is chronically absent, we say that every student should have an attendance plan, and they're finding that those attendance plans, the families are working closely with them, collaborating with them, and helping to implement those. So they're also having the weekly monitoring, and every quarter they're recognizing perfect attendance for students, so that when the quarter's over, the students can try again for the perfect attendance. They're continuing, which seems to be a theme. It's the students that are having medically extended absences because of medical reasons or mental health. We're really working to really think about how we can support those students better. So we're digging into that. We're going to continue to work with families on that in that area. The high school is also reviewing their attendance tracker bi-weekly. They're using, which is part of the attendance plan, but they've really started to use it all tiers. We have a root cause analysis scale that we didn't make it. It's out there for attendance. So what they're doing is using that with families and students to try to really target their interventions. So if we know exactly why the student is being absent, you can better target those interventions. So they've really found that to be helpful. Their overall attendance has improved from 93.99% to 94.74%. They were using that attendance tracker last year, so they have more data to be able to compare to last year. The tardies have reduced significantly from 2,816 tardies to 1,881 to year to date. And they're finding that there's increased parent involvement and student awareness with the importance of attendance. So they're also continuing to kind of figure out how to better support those families where there's medical absences. And one thing that I really think is great, that the high school staff, the SST team, will be working with the middle school staff to identify those students who are currently at the tier 3 level, so they can make the connections before the students come to the high school. So they can start to connect those students to somebody at the high school, so they have a trusted adult there. So obviously we continue to experience absenteeism, but I think that we're seeing some positives with the plan. And I think that next year we'll really have some good data to be able to compare, because we're all using that attendance tracker. Are there any questions? Yeah.
So you might have already answered it, but that's why the middle school doesn't have any real data, is because they weren't tracking it last year?
Yeah, they didn't, I think they started using the tracker towards the end of the year, but the attendance tracker was used at the high school throughout the whole year. And the state data comes out in March, so we'll have like district data and broken down by schools, and then it comes out again at the end of the year. So all schools are now using that tracker.
And a parent asked me this, does the preschool count for the tardiness?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of tardies.
I'm sorry?
That's a lot of tardies.
For the high school?
Yeah.
Yes.
Even dropping from 2816 to 1881, that's a
Yep.
lot for the amount of students that we have.
So they will continue to work on that, but to see that decrease is good, for sure. Yep.
Does anybody have anything else?
This is, I believe the answer is yes, but when we're talking about the areas for continued growth that we're looking at into the high school, around supporting students who are chronically absent due to extended illness and hospitalization, is there a defined on-ramp? I know there's like the program for students who are sort of struggling with re-entering the building. Is there something specific for these students who are coming back off of an extended illness or hospitalization? Or is it sort of they get wrapped into kids who have concussions and, are kind of struggling with recovering from that and, mental health concerns and are re-entering from that? Is it one program or are they sort of treated separately?
So I would say it's individualized. We have the LIFT program, which we can use. And so each student coming back in, depending on what their needs are, that how we bring them back would be individualized, for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I appreciate the committee who put this together because it really is making a difference.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
You, Shannon?
The next item is the mid-year student assessment data. The Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment will provide the mid-year student assessment data.
Thank you. So we've just finished our mid-year benchmark window, and I'm presenting tonight the data from the iReady benchmarks. So the data that you're going to see here represents all of grade 1 at SES as well as grades 2 through 8 across the district, and any students who tested during that window. We certainly had a few who, because of illnesses, missed the testing window, who will still be taking the assessment, but are just not included within this data. So I'm first going to start with achievement and achievement in reading. So between the fall and the mid-year reading benchmark assessment, and this includes all those grade levels combined, we had a reduction of 9 percentage points in students who were scoring 2 or more grade levels below, and then an increase in 15 percentage points of those students scoring at or above grade level. The assessment reflects a relative weakness in comprehension of informational text, and this data that you see here is very similar to what we saw last year. We're increasing the number of students who are on grade level by about the same percent and reducing the students who are significantly below by the same. And then that relative weakness in informational text is generally what we see across all schools. In mathematics achievement, the same thing. We reduced by 10 percentage points students who were 2 or more grade levels below from the beginning of the year, and then an increase of 21 percentage points of students who are scoring at or above grade level. Something that's a little bit different this year is that results are fairly even across all of the tested domains, where in the past we've seen a relative weakness in geometry, and we don't see that emerging from this data anymore, and I don't think we see it through MCAS either, that those have evened out. And once again, this mid-year data is similar to the data that we saw mid-year last year. So the other measure that we looked at is growth, and the measure we're going to take a look at here is typical growth. So typical growth shows that how a student is growing compared to average student growth at the same grade and baseline placement level. So the charts below show progress towards annual typical growth for all the students that participated in the assessment. So that first graph, you can see that almost half of our students have met their end of the year growth target by mid-year, which is definitely something to celebrate. We would be looking for the median progress to be at least 50% by mid-year, and across all schools, we're significantly higher than that. And then you can see it's sort of broken down by school, the average median progress as well as the percentage of students at each school who have met that end of the year benchmark. The next page shows math, and we have 32% of our students who have, across the district, who have met that end of the year growth target by mid-year. But you can see we also have 27% who are growing or who are not showing as much growth right now. We have 65% at Newbury for median progress, 70% at Pine Grove, 65% at Salisbury, so all of those above that 50% that we'd want to be seeing. At the middle school, we have 24% in mathematics right now. How that's translating to percentage that has met, we're still in the low 30s for all the schools for the percentage of students who have met typical growth, but this is showing that we have some areas to focus on at the middle school, and we are actively working to address supports for students who are below grade level, as well as continuing to support the effective implementation of the new curriculum. It is natural to see a dip in achievement with the implementation of anything new, and I don't know how much that's playing into this right now, but I definitely think we're going to keep a very close eye on it and be putting things into place and then monitoring progress on those. On the next page, we have just general trends that we had greater achievement and growth in reading and the mathematics. Median growth in reading was 67% or higher across all schools, with between 45% at the low end and then 54% at the high end of students meeting their annual typical growth by the mid-year. For mathematics, median growth was 65% or higher across all the elementary schools, and then, as I just spoke about, 24% at the middle school. But between 30 and 34% of students at each school met their annual typical growth by the mid-year assessment. So this graph right here, we always like to see schools in the upper right-hand quadrant, and it is wonderful to be able to celebrate all of our schools there. This is performance relative to national norms, so we have all schools in the high performance, high growth quadrant for reading. Mathematics. We have, let's see, as we've spoken about, lower growth at the middle school, but we have Salisbury, Newbury, and Pine Grove in that higher growth, high performance quadrant. Some highlights, and these are things that get lost when we look at all of these averages, and when we're looking at multiple classrooms, multiple schools, multiple students. I want to be able to call out some of the highlights that I'm able to see when looking very closely into the data that aren't necessarily shown when we look at it in the aggregate. In grade 5 reading at Salisbury, we had 62% of students meeting the end of the year benchmark by mid-year. Across all of grade 4 at NES, 70% were meeting the benchmark. And then we have one second grade class at Pine Grove School with 81% of the students meeting their growth target by mid-year. So what I've been doing, this has been such a positive part of my job over the last couple of weeks, is reaching out to these teachers and having conversations about what is it, what are you doing, what's helping to these students to grow and achieve at these levels. And I'm hearing about the impact of a lot of a lot of things that we've talked about here, about collaborative teaching, people lifting up their colleagues, the role of the math specialists, the role of the special educators in classrooms, the importance of looking at data, everybody saying they have the best group of students to work with and giving the credit right to them. So I've been going around and so I've been emailing with some, but actually having meetings with others to say, what can we as a district learn from what you're finding effective and how do we share that across the district? So I look forward to continuing that work. In terms of areas for growth, we definitely need to continue with Tier 2 and 3 interventions to support those students who are below grade level. We want Tier 1 instruction to be focused on grade level standards. We know that not all students have mastered those grade level standards when they get there, so we need to provide them some way, whether it's through win time interventions or it's through iReady and the instructional, the MyPath, but getting them exposure and opportunities to practice those below grade level skills. We also want to continue to support extensions for students who are at or above grade level, and really continuing to support the effective implementation of big ideas mathematics in grades 7 and 8 as well. I would extend that to effective implementation of big ideas at the high school as well. We just don't have high school mid-year benchmark data from iReady, although they are participating in a benchmark through the Big Ideas platform. We just don't have that data yet. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for? I have a question. Where the middle school has high performance, low growth, I know that at the elementary level, they use iReady for math and reading. And I know that the middle school has just started using. So do you think some of the low growth is possibly not having that assessment for math that they currently have now?
So the middle school's been using the benchmark assessments, but haven't been using the MyPath instruction for as many students as the elementary school. That's not, I don't believe there are any schools that are using it across all grade levels, or it's, teachers are identifying, like, yes, I have a structure to employ this to make sure that students are getting the 45 minutes a week in order to see growth. So we have some teachers using it, some students are engaging in it, and at the middle school that number has been lower. I know part of the middle school SIP was it had those action steps of getting students who are below grade level onto using MyPath and iReady, and we are sort of expediting that process. So we will have all students who are below grade level in math or reading accessing iReady instruction beginning right after February vacation.
That's good to hear.
You mentioned some of the success being a result of co-teaching, special ed push-ins, that type of thing. Is that happening less at the middle school?
So the ones that have been, when I reached out to the teachers and were sharing, I love work, I have the math specialist, I'm co-teaching, they've been those who have been participating in the trainings that have been offered at Salisbury over the last couple of years through the evidence-based programming grant. And we have teachers from Newbury who have, and then all of Pine Grove staff has been, is trained, had an initial training in co-teaching as well. So it's definitely more widespread. It's not to say that co-teaching is not happening. There are definitely 2 certified educators in many classrooms there. But I don't know if the model or all sort of 6 approaches are being used in the way that because we're offering, we have coaching for teachers at Salisbury too, to get these, and we haven't had that opportunity at the middle school.
Yeah, I was just curious,
Yeah.
and just thinking about where this goes after this year.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say how phenomenal it is that we have so many students that are hitting their end of year, sort of like they've got the vocabulary, they've got the reading skills, they've got the comprehension skills that they're expected to have at the end of their grade, and in a lot of cases, half of them have it halfway through the year, and it's only up from there. And I think, not only is it a checkbox on the skills, but just the confidence that it gives those students. I think that can only do, great things for them, because I know when they're not hitting it, and it's sort of frustrating, right? You get that I'm not good at math, I'm not good at reading, I'm not good at writing, right? And that gets internalized. And I do hope that we're doing sort of a good job at communicating this to students who are doing really well too, to say, maybe you struggled in hitting this in a previous year, but look what you've done, right? This is a phenomenal growth, and as much as a teacher can provide instruction, right, a lot of it is the student's will to take that in. So
absolutely. And I do think the data chats that teachers are engaging in data chats after benchmarks with students to look at the results, and every one of them is identifying something in their own results that they've done well. Yeah. And even students who are really struggling, who have some significant deficits in an area, are able to say, here's something I'm doing well, and here's how I can build upon that. So I think that practice of engaging students in data chats about their own work, and then a plan for how they're going to move forward, has been really impactful. I think that has something to do with why we're seeing so many meet that growth at the mid-year.
Yeah. And I would wish that for all of us, right? We should all know something we're good at, and also something that we should be improving. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have another question. The reading specialists and math specialists work hand in hand with the teachers looking at that data, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Could you give us possibly what they do for people out there that don't understand what a math specialist and a reading specialist does to help teachers collaborate and work with students?
Absolutely. So I feel like the data processes we have, which the math and the reading specialists are, they really are the drivers behind those at the schools, are some of the strongest structures that we have here. All teachers have access to their own data, but I think the power and the movement and the student growth comes when you sit down and you collaborate and you look at it together and you unpack it. So the reading and the math specialist, along with the building administration, facilitates data meetings after each benchmark. Currently they're happening at SES over this week, and their teachers are, grade levels are getting together for almost a half a day. And they are really digging into this data. They are looking at every single student to identify their strengths, to identify areas that they need support. Through that process, they are determining what interventions they're going to get during win time, identifying the standards and the skills that they are need to be addressed during that win time, and then figuring out who's going to be supporting it, and developing instructional plans in order to do that. So that is a process. I'm talking about SES because it's happening now, but it's happening across the district. And our reading and math specialists, I think, have, besides just strong data literacy, a relentless focus on data to say, like, we are going to continue to move our practices forward, and we're going to continue to move students. So we're so fortunate to have all of them at across the district, elementary and middle school.
Thank you. And it shows with the growth in reading across the district. I'm especially happy to see the Salisbury get into that right quadrant. Thank you. The next item is the monthly report of the superintendent of schools. The superintendent is going to provide his report.
So it is a brief report. Two quick things to update you on. The first is there is nothing new, but we reported to you, is it 2 months ago now, or was that last month? I think it was that January? The graduation requirements. I think that was December, actually. So there is nothing new to report other than it is becoming a larger and larger discussion. So I linked here for you a position paper that the Mass Association of School Superintendents put together, outlining what we believe as an organization the concerns are and where the priorities need to be. So I'm not going to spend more time on that because there is no new development. But you know that or if you saw that the Secretary of Education is stepping down, Patrick Tutwiler stepping down effective Friday. The Salem Superintendent, Steve Zreich, was appointed as the new Secretary of Education. I don't know the exact effective date, if that's Friday or Monday or soon. But certainly the Secretary, along with the Commissioner, has a large part in where this goes next, but it involves the Governor's office, and so it is a large discussion, and it is, I think it's going to be a while before we have any clarity on it, but just want to make sure that you're keeping up to date on information that is flowing. And the second is a workshop that we participated, I wasn't able to participate today, but Rich and John Skinnicky went to a Waste Watchers, not Weight Watchers, Waste Watchers workshop, and it was in partnership with all of our member towns. Newburyport ACES program is spearheading this effort on solid waste reduction. So I don't know if you want to say anything other than it was a first step.
Good way to put it.
Yep. So met out at Parker River with all the area towns. So we're certainly going to do our part to see where we can reduce both solid waste as well as food waste as an effort as well. So we'll leave it at that. And then the personnel report is there. It's certainly quieter this time of year, but certainly happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Brian?
My only question was personnel report. I saw that there was a BCBA resignation. Is that is it going to be an open position for a replacement, or do we know?
Was it buttoned up? Was it a yes?
Sorry, am I going to make you say something
we
you
have a
shouldn't
yes.
say in public?
I was going to say we have a yes from a candidate about 2 hours ago.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
I know it's hard to hire, so.
Right, this day and age, we don't feel good until they walk in the door, but as of this point in time, they did interviews earlier today, Shannon and Patty Hebert did, and we have a yes. So
I am very relieved to hear that.
very highly qualified and experienced candidate, too.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the monthly report of the Superintendent of Schools for February 2026.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the FY27 tentative budget. We're pretty far into the fiscal year 27 budget process with 7 meetings so far. The committee provided the superintendent with guidance on the tentative budget last week, and that comes before us tonight for a vote. As a reminder, this is what's nicknamed the high watermark budget. While that is not legally binding, it is accepted that the final budget to be voted in mid-March will not be higher than this total amount. Through the lines within the budget may shift and the overall total can go down. I'm going to ask the Superintendent and Director of Finance of Operations to go through the document here tonight.
All right. So you have in front of you now the, as Linda mentioned, the consolidated tentative budget. We're not going to spend time going through it in detail because we've spent time over the last several weeks going over the detail. Further to that this year is the fact that normally you would see increases in salary lines apportioned throughout the 1000 series, the 2000 series, the 2305s, the 2310s for each of the schools. You do not see that because we're carrying an aggregate number so as not to show our hand in negotiation with our 2 largest employee organizations, the TRTA Unit A and B. So the document in and of itself is a fairly boring document as far as showing the increase. This obviously then gets more detailed as we move toward the final budget in March, and then obviously in the fall adjusted budget where we move any money around that needs to be without changing anything to the town. So just to quickly walk you, if you look on pages 1 and 2, this outlines all of the changes from the current budget. So this isn't change, or these are not changes from previous meetings. This is a consolidation of all of the changes, anything that has changed from the current fiscal '26 budget, which was adjusted in November or December. Thank you. So just to quickly walk through, and I'll point out where things have changed since last week. So at the top, the maintenance contracted services, we had the discussion about that, are necessary. We are going to spend those, and so those need to be increased, and those are apportioned out to the schools after being carried in a district line. For athletics, we are carrying 2 of the 3 coaches. I'm understanding that each coach differently about an hour and a half ago before this went out than it was when last had a conversation. But we do have e-coach or esports, and the goal here is we have, obviously we are a champion school, and so we felt it was important to continue developing the unified athletic program, and this is a discussion around changing needs. I was talking with someone earlier about there are those who believe that flag football will replace contact football someday, right? So there's an emerging shift in our overall, we're watching it, not being able to field teams that we used to be able to field. A varsity, a junior varsity, used to be freshman, JV1, JV2, and we're now either running a varsity and a JV1 or sometimes just a varsity because we just don't have the student population to field those teams. So with the shifting need, we've got, we included the girls, adding girls flag football, which does not exist currently, as well as unified track and field, which does not exist currently. For business and finance, the rest of these shifted a little bit as far as how they're displayed because they're mapped to the budget now, but none of these shifted as far as payroll expenses, business and finance expenses, legal services, IT contracted services was called out, special ed contracted services, adjusted a touch there. Curriculum is the same. On transportation, that's actually up $43,000. For out of district, we've been, it is amazing how it's been changing by the day over the last 3 hours. And so there have been some ups and downs, and we were almost ready to put another tuition into out of district, but we believe there's some other offsets that we're going to count on at this point. However, the transportation, we did put $43,000 back into special ed transportation, which is one single route. So that would be one specialized route for a student who would likely need their own transportation for a medical chair van. So that did increase by $43,000. Utilities and expenses, contracted services, the same. Essex retirement, the same. Medical, we have shifted our assumption. As we reported to you last week, we're at 14.4. We've shifted it down to 12. We believe it'll be a touch less than that, but we have a verbal that it will shift within hundredths and tenths of a percent. And so we did shift that down, and we're carrying some overage for some assumed new plans, but that number did shift there. Then liabilities called out separately, column movement, salary reserve, same. Again, that normally that 1.783 million, it's larger than it ever has been before in the aggregate or spread out, but that number is usually spread out across all the 6 locations, including the district office, representing increases, and that is inclusive of set-asides for Unit B, Unit A, all other AFSCME contracts, and an assumption for a COLA for non-unit members, which is all support staff, office staff, administrators across the district. As I said, special ed tuitions, as of today, is still the same. Charter and choice and other tuitions are the same. Over the page, onto page 2, is where we get into the changes overall. So net on the bottom of page 1 shows an increase of roughly $4.25 million. If you were to produce, we haven't called this yet a level services budget, but if you were to produce a level services budget, that would be the number right now on paper, the dollars we need to carry what exists today into July 2nd of 2026 is 4.28, so $4,280,725. Over the page on page 2 codifies the cuts that we were talking about in relatively the same detail. We did tease out the grade levels that would be reduced at the elementary, so that on the corresponding page 7, you can see the net resulting class sizes with those changes. But it is, again, it's 2 teachers, would be a grade 2 section and a grade 4 section at Newbury, as well as 2 instructional assistants. It would be a grade 4 section at Pine Grove and 2 instructional assistants. It would be a grade 5 and a grade 6 section at Salisbury. 1 special education teacher, and again, that is about caseloads and needs, as well as 2 assistants. And so the 696,000, close to 700,000 showing there, we're showing that in the aggregate, not by school, because the reality is all of our unit members are unit members within the district. So we've obviously had conversations with those individuals with whom we think would be impacted, but a lot of things would change between now and when these would go into effect later this year. And so it could be that the reductions actually show up in different moves as people move around. So in the aggregate, we're looking at roughly 700,000 in savings there. At the middle school, it's the same. It's 1 of each of the core content, English, math, science, and social studies, as well as 2 IAs. And at the high school, it's a science technology teacher, and that would be in the ed tech. Math business teacher would be a business teacher. 1 English teacher in VPA, it's a reduction in the overall FTEs, still offering the same courses, but based on interest and overall enrollments. LIFT, again, shifting LIFT from a full-time teacher and therapist to an instructional assistant with a therapist. We're actually using that model now. And is it the same as a teacher? No, it is not. But it is actually working fairly well. Ultimately, in the LIFT program, again, just to make sure everyone's aware, I think you referenced it earlier, those are the students who are somehow school avoidant or out of school, whether that be a mental health condition or an extended medical absence, and they're working their way back in. And so the teachers of those students, if they're taking 5 core classes or 5 classes, the teachers are their academic teachers. The LIFT program supports them in transitioning back in. So just to be clear on what that is. Excuse me, and then we have 3 instructional assistants at the high school. Have students coming off of one-on-ones as we speak, which is good news for the student, right, as that's a programming decision. And then across the district, it's 1.1 English learner teachers. And then in the business office, we're going to reduce 1 staff member in our business office and consolidate the accounting and AP support there. So in the net, in the aggregate rather, it's a savings of $1.713 million. So that figure 2566779 on a week ago today, it was 2565331, so it has increased $1,448. And so that is what we are saying based on the cuts we had shown to you last week. I hesitate to say the word propose, but what we showed to you last week. And that adjusted level services number, that's where we land with the assessments to member towns. So on page 3, a page you are familiar with, and over the page on page 4, just to reiterate one more time, page 4 is a process we have absolutely no control over. Our regional agreement calls for the statutory method, and so therefore, we have to assess our member towns. On page 4, looking at the top, it's a straight down. Overall spending, $56,957,000. Local revenue, again, we are netting over the page there 1,600 new dollars at this point. Each of the town of Newbury, Raleigh, and Salisbury pay their minimum local contribution. In the aggregate, that's $25,366,230. The amount we have to assess from step 1 up above, minus their minimums, leaves $20,629,000 and change to be apportioned by enrollment. And again, we're talking a lot about step 4 here this year so far, in the fact that as I was pulling some data together, my weekly Scoop video will be about trying to bring awareness to this process, and so community members can be involved at the public hearing. Back in 2010, the share was roughly 32, 32, 34. 32 Newbury, 32 Rowley, 34% Salisbury. So it was almost thirds of the pie, which works really well when you're a 3-town district. Fast forward to today, you now can see that Newbury has shifted under 29% of the total district. Rowley is just about to 34%, which is a high point for them. And Salisbury, after hitting close to 40% over the last 15 years, I forget the exact year, is down under 38% now. Over the last 5 years alone, Newbury has decreased roughly 2.5%. Salisbury has decreased a little over 9%, and Rowley has increased close to 6.7%. So that factor, the minimum local contribution, which is step 2, is driving the challenge where we talked earlier in this process, if we didn't add $1 new to the budget, Rowley's assessment goes up $423,000, which, based on a meeting we had earlier this week, is more than half of their new growth before we spend $1 new. So, the challenge is on the table in that, up over the page again on page 3, where you have a tentative proposed budget in front of you of $2,565,180 operating, the bottom yellow box there. More than half of that, you can see Rowley's assessment is $1.295 million. More than half of the assessment is being paid by the town of Rowley. More than half of the assessment increase, I should say, is being borne by the town of Rowley. So one last final thing, and again, obviously the towns are aware of this. Anytime our excess and deficiency is higher than $500,000, we take $90,000 of that to pay to reduce their assessment on the capital, the debt for the stadium. We are at $446,000 on our certified E&D. We were actually there last year, but we didn't catch that in time. And so this year we are reducing that contribution out of E&D to the stadium payments. So each of the towns are actually going up a little more. Usually they're going up $1,000 or $2,000, and they're going up between $24,000 and $30,000. So at the bottom you have the net aggregate budget, which is the number you approve. Remember, it's both the operating and the capital. So I'll stop there. Certainly answer any questions, but other than that, nothing has changed since we last spoke.
Does anybody have any questions?
Is there information that we need to hear from that meeting that happened earlier this week? We discussed that being important.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say that as mentioned in the District Communication Committee meeting notes earlier today, the Vice Chair asked the Town of Rowley representatives for more information about their town finances. Since the assessment impact weighs most heavily on Rowley, I understand that happened on Monday in the form of a meeting, and I would like to ask the Vice Chair to briefly recount it. The Superintendent, Director of Finance and Operations, and Paul Lees were there as well and can add any additional comments.
Sorry, hang on, I'm trying to figure out what we have. So yeah, and I have lots of notes in my bag, which I will haul out in a second, but we asked for extra copies of everything that was handed out at that meeting, so I believe I have all of that for you here. I don't know if we have enough copies, though. I was remiss in asking Brian to...
It's actually the top is a packet like we had, and then the rest of the piles are piles of the individual documents.
Okay, so do you think there's none?
I did not count them.
Okay.
I don't know.
Counting them now, hang on. 2, really hard to get apart. 3, 4, 5, 6. So maybe we can share a little? Okay. So hold on to the really tall one, because that's the one we're going to spend the most time on, the really long one. I don't know if we want to share this out. Do you have extras? I think Foster actually asked this question last week, so I think he probably wants to see this. Oh, you're going to share over there? Okay. All right. So I'm going to, however you guys want to do that one. Yeah, these are all separate pages. Don't have. You want to print some? I can pass. Oh, you can pass them? Sure. I'll take that. Okay. And then this one, this is the full packet. So I don't know if you want that one. It's got one copy of everything in it, which is how we received it before. So that was kind of, here, Rich, here's one more. Thank you. We're just gonna grab one. Okay, so I know Rich is still handing them out right here, but so the meeting on Monday was from Raleigh, town administrator, assistant town administrators, assessor, accountant, tax collector. I know there's people I'm missing. But that was the accountant, I think. Finance chair, FinCom chair, 2 members of the select board. I think that was it. And then Paul. Owen was invited but unable to make it. Myself, Brian, Rich. I think that's pretty much the crew that was around the table. So this was 2 hours worth of discussion, and I do not want to take you back through all of that tonight because it was a lot. But the tall sheet will essentially take you through the bulk of what we looked at. So there's 2 main columns in there. One is the final fiscal year 26, so the current year, and the other one is estimated for fiscal year 27. So kind of talking through, the way finances work, I'm looking down the fiscal year 27 column. You have the prior year tax base, and through Proposition 2.5, towns have the ability to assess 2.5% on top of the current tax base. So it's not, it's the total, it's not individual houses, so it's not like an individual house's tax is going to go 2.5%. It's in the aggregate across all of them. Every time you're seeing a letter on the tall sheet, it's got a reference packet in some of these other paperwork that back it up. So it's actually giving you the facts behind it. We went through a good amount of this. I'm not going to go through them tonight, but they're there if you do want to explore, I guess. And then there is a certain amount of new growth that is essentially not currently in the tax base. So they can count it as, I call it an extra, I guess. Right? It's something that's been built anew things that are not currently on the tax roll that are actually getting added to the tax roll. So that's the 136,617 number. Last year there was the override passed. You can see that in the final fiscal year 26 column. There's nothing in the estimated 27 column. As you go down farther, you're looking at basically the prior debt exclusion override funds that are sitting in there. They're not seeing, I mean, I guess the big message here, right, is there's not a lot of growth when you're looking at these numbers, right? They're not seeing a lot of new revenue. Prop 2.5 is basically $500,000. And then as you're getting farther down, you're going to look at their cherry sheet and their local receipts and actually see those numbers going down. The assessor did indicate that he thinks some of those numbers are low and they could potentially come back up a bit. But I mean, right now, like you can see in the cherry sheet line, they're seeing a $26,000 decline rather than any increase in that line. We talked pretty extensively about how the way the town is set up, the water department and the light department are separate enterprise funds. So they manage all of their own expenses and revenues. There is some interaction with the town, which you'll see on this sheet. So for instance, Essex Regional Retirement actually gets assessed back to the town. Part of that is the water department, and the water department then essentially pays their portion of Essex Regional Retirement to the town. The town then pays the whole thing off to Essex Regional Retirement. So there's some interaction there, but by and large, those are kept separate. You're not seeing them existing in this sheet because they don't really interact with the sheet, if that makes sense. There's some general fund transfers that are in there that you'll see. We talked a little bit about those. They're not material. They're not large numbers of money or amounts of money. Looking down, right as you're getting above the bar there, about 5 lines above there, you can see that there is about $1.6 million in free cash that was used as to fund the operating budget last year. I think this is not, something that's foreign to the school committee. Free cash is analogous to our excess and deficiency, right? It's supposed to be your emergency funds. When you're in a cash bind, it's tempting, as we all know, to use your emergency funds to fund your everyday. And that's what happened here. It's very, very difficult to get out of that. So I know probably everybody's eye went to the bottom of this sheet, and I just want to, I guess, kind of acknowledge in seeing that there's a number sitting in final fiscal year 26 and not in the estimated fiscal year 27 column, that you can't cold turkey off of using that type of emergency fund to fund your operating budget, right? When we got away from doing that, when we implemented our fiscal policies that were intended to influence our borrowing in a positive way, hopefully, down the road, and our bond rating, we had to get away from that. And even though ours was relatively small, like we were pulling at most, I think, $300,000 in my time that I've been on the committee. I don't know, Linda and Paul, if we were pulling more out of excess and deficiency prior to that, but it's hard to get away from, and it's going to be especially hard to get away from when it's essentially $1.6 million that you're pulling every year out of your emergency fund or a similar number into your operating budget, and then using that to prop up your revenues so that you can balance your budget. Down the bottom, once you get past that baseline, so I guess at the baseline you're seeing right there that the total revenues are going down, the 977,892. Part of that is included in the free cash not being included in there as a funding source. Below the gray line is going into expenses. Their expenses are going up relatively marginally in most cases, so it's not huge increases. But there are increases that are included there. They're seeing costs similar to ours. We had a lengthy conversation about the healthcare rates that we're seeing, and how it was affecting the various organizations. You can see they have COLA sitting in there. They are currently doing negotiations with, I think, library and fire department. So they also have negotiations going on at the same time as Triton does. Down the bottom you'll see the transfers in. Those are essentially, funds that are matching the ones up the top. You'll see that they're fairly matching. They do not, again, talking about kind of these enterprise funds that they have, those will be inserted down the bottom. That's why there's blanks down there right now, but they don't have a material effect on the town's budget because they are separate enterprise funds that are largely managed inside themselves. So that it's my understanding from the conversation we had, and Rich and Brian probably have, it's an accounting practice, right? My understanding is it has very little effect, but it's an accounting practice to include it in there.
Yeah, our food services account works similarly.
Yes, yeah, so similar to food services. So it's existing outside, sort of the funds there. You can see bottom right-hand corner, the available cash is based on their fiscal year 27 estimated expenses and revenues, sitting at negative 2.6 million, call it. Their free cash is sitting at 2.6 million, roughly. So there's an $18,000 difference there. Again, I just will note, like, when I look at that 2.6, the negative 2.6 number that's sitting there in the available balance, in my mind, again, you can't cold turkey off of using free cash or any sort of emergency funds. You should, in my mind, there's an amount. They can't cold turkey off that. There is an amount they're going to have to use, a significant amount that they're going to have to use of the 2.6 million in free cash, no matter what, right? It just, you can't balance a budget when you have 1.6 million in free cash used last year and not use a similar amount. The only way to do it is the way that the school committee did it in the past with excess and deficiency, and you have to ease off of that over several years, right? Or use an advantageous year. I know we used in part the COVID years, right, to get away from that practice, because it's a hard practice to get away from. It's like making a deal with the devil, right? And it's hard. So I guess I would say understand that while it's saying 2.6, the reality is, right, that there would have to be some free cash used to offset that already, no matter what.
I have a question. Didn't they have an override last year?
They did. So it was used to hire full-time fire department. And my understanding is that by and large, that amount is already taken up in here because you've added the salaries and benefits that offset the override amount, if that makes sense. You do have in your packet one of these elements. Let me see if I can find it. It looks like, do I not have one?
So I'm thinking, Rowley didn't have a big enough override to help offset the problems that they're having in their town.
I mean, right, it's like overrides are tricky. I can't second guess anything. I do some so I guess there's, in my experience, I've seen various approaches, right? You can have scheduled overrides where you simply say, we know that we're going to exceed Prop 2.5 every so many years, and we sort of need to count on having an override, and we need to know the overrides need to be about this big, and it's going to need to last us about this long, right? You can go for an override for a very specific thing. You're going to say, we need exactly this amount. We're going for exactly this amount, and that's where you're at. you can go for an amount and then give yourself a buffer, knowing that, right, the reason that you probably went for your override was because you were struggling with cash availability, and that you need, you know, in that it's very difficult to go for an override year after year after year. You don't get into that cycle. You're going to need some buffer moving forward. So my understanding is they went for sort of the middle option, right? It was we need a full-time fire department. We're going for the full-time fire department. There was a story, I guess, related by the town assessor that you know, he'd even looked and said, like, could we do $40,000 more to satisfy this particular thing? And the thing was, we're going for the full-time fire department, and it is that amount. That was the amount. So let me see, can I see your?
Let me jump in. So the only thing I would add to what Narissa said is that the meeting was 2 hours, about an hour and 3/4 was spent on this preliminary sheet. All the letters were the attachments that supported it, and Debbie Egan and the town accountant, I think, methodically went through all the numbers, all the supports. The only thing I would add to what she didn't say was that the town actually has 3 unfilled police positions right now.
Yeah, so I was actually going to talk about, I was looking for this sheet. That's the one that I apparently didn't bring with me. So it looks like this, and this is actually how they got to their free cash amount for this year. And all of those numbers are sort of delineated about on the right-hand side. So the state frowns on them, estimating their revenues at sort of the full amount that they expect to come in to give them a little extra buffer. So they had some amounts come in above what they had estimated for motor vehicle investment income. You can see all those in the top box. And then on the right-hand side, they listed out any unexpended amounts that were over $20,000. So you can see that there are vacancies in there. I mean, one of the conversations we had was that, you know, they struggle to hire people. And that's in part wages, it's in part benefits, and the split in their benefits, but it does make it hard for them to hire. And so you're going to see in here that they do have police wages in here. They have highway department wages in here that have essentially, they had allocated those funds, they were unused, so they flow through to the free cash certification that happens at the end of the year. Similar to if we had positions that were unfilled, right? And we had those expenses allocated in our budget, those would flow through to our excess and deficiency at the end of the year.
And then, of course, the wild cards that they have in their budget is snow removal. We have the sped, you know, which is always a question mark. You know, our sped expenses go up because people move into town. On their side, I think the big thing is the snow.
It is. I did ask someone I know that is in that business, and you know, who does financial accounting for municipalities, and basically the answer is apparently snow and ice is one thing that you don't at the end of the year have to settle. You can carry a deficit year to year. So I mean, again, choices like smart finances versus, you know, versus carrying it. Not to make a pun, but I think, you know, not having lived in that world myself, could that snowball on you? Probably. But you know, it is, I guess, not as much of a factor as when they were telling us that they were, I think, $9,000 and had not accounted for the last 2 storms or any future ones. That's not as much of a factor necessarily as I thought it was going to be, because you don't have to apparently settle that every year. So, and then last of all, this is kind of an odd packet, but they did some modeling for the other towns as well. We didn't spend basically any time on this in the meeting, but it's the one that says member towns fiscal year 27, 2.5% increase versus Triton preliminary FY27 increase. So that's available there as well. That's just some sort of modeling outside of their budget that they did and provided as part of this packet. So I'm happy to answer questions if you have them, although if I didn't ask the question myself, I don't know if I can answer it. Hang on just a second, Foster. And I guess, you know, I may be standing alone on this and not speaking for the committee, and I always say, like, you know, I sometimes want my one voice out in the wild, but I think you know, it's helpful to have, not me explaining this here, but to have somebody explaining it to all of you, because now I feel like the messenger. So if I didn't get something quite right, you know, I'm relying and looking at Paul and Brian and Rich to tell me if I didn't understand something or relate something properly, but it is coming through me, right? So it would be better, in my personal opinion, perhaps again not shared by the committee, if it was directly relayed. But this is more information than we've had in any recent past. I can tell you, I sit down and read the town meeting warrant cover to cover every year. I'm a geek, I will admit that. And I did not realize the extent of the free cash use that was going on based on the town meeting warrant. That was a surprise to me, because you just, until you see this level of detail, you don't understand sort of that's going on, that those because I can see those numbers, like those numbers are public in Department of Revenue's municipal dashboards, so I've always seen those numbers, right? But if you don't understand that, you know, it's showing at 2.5 last year and 2.6 this year, which I can see in the dashboards, but 1.6 of that is being pulled through the budget as a revenue source, that's an internal mechanism that I could not understand based on what was available externally. So for me, that was, I think, the biggest
Eye-opener.
eye-opener. Yeah.
So the only thing
as
I would
part of
do
this
is I would just
process.
ask Brian and Rich to jump in.
Yeah.
With Dr. Poor about anything that we've said, mostly Narissa, that needs better clarification or wasn't quite right, because you were there as well.
Yeah, no, if you want to jump in, nothing else to clarify. I certainly think this is more of an elected official versus the hired help discussion. But I think the clarification, no, I think, yeah, it was a very helpful conversation, as you said, Paul, to understand the entire sheet and the mechanism of how it's in and out.
Sorry, Foster.
So just understanding the gravity of the financial situation, you may not know this, but do you perhaps know, on average throughout the years that we've had the system with the, you know, Triton, the percentage or like ratio of how much the town earns to how much they are forking towards the school?
So it varies every year, and this is one of the tough things, is that, you know, there are times that I actually have a chart I can send to you, because again, I'm like doing data things, and it's spiking, right? So there are times where you'll kind of see these curves where they're sitting in there, where you could maybe make an average out of it, and then there are other years that you'll see a certain town spike way up and then drop way down. So to try and generalize that, I think is really hard. There are times in recent years that towns have taken a negative. They've actually had savings, right? And then there are other times that they're sitting at 6 or 7%. It's hard to make that generalization. Part of that is just, right, our budget can be here or it can be here, and it can almost be independent of what the towns are assessed, or how their assessment changes, I guess I should say. And we should always strive to have it be relatively low. And I just, I was going through, after listening to the select board meeting, I was going through last night and actually updating data that I hadn't looked at since 2021, and just looking at it. And, you know, when I look at the last 10 years, we're sitting in like the lower third to quarter of how much of our budget has actually increased. And that's appropriate, because we have a decreasing population, and you know, or enrollment. And I know it's hard to understand, but all in all, although we've had high numbers and low numbers, you know, our overall increase compared to other districts, both municipal and regional, has been relatively low during that time. It's basically gone up, you know, it's 1.33, so 133%, right? You're looking at some of those districts out there, and they're going up 150, 160, right? There are significantly higher numbers. There's ones that are sitting at like 128, 129. So there's some that are lower than us, but by and large, we're sitting sort of in the bottom section of that, but that is not reflected on our towns. at all, because those assessments can just, yeah. And it's, sometimes we know factors that come into it, and we can sort of understand what's going to happen ahead of time a little bit. And other times, I mean, I can say, like, we've tried to figure it out, and you just don't know because it varies so much. I mean, even looking at, you know, Rowley overall this year went up 17 students. If you look at Pine Grove, they went up 25 students. We didn't lose that many students at the high school from what I can tell, you know, in Rowley. So, you know, in a situation like that, when I was seeing Pine Grove up 25 students just based on our October 1 enrollments, I was actually thinking it was going to be worse than this. I suspect that some of those, because, you know, their enrollments are, you're going to have other things. You're going to have choice in there. You're going to have these other factors that are in there. So honestly, it's better than I thought it was going to be. I was worried it was going to be worse than that. But until those numbers come out on the 4th Wednesday in January, we don't know.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No,
I know
thank
that's it makes a lot more sense when it's graphical.
Yeah, no, I just want to know, like.
Yeah, that's the long and short answer, I guess.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I guess the issue that I have is we have a DCC meeting every month to have open and honest conversations with our towns. And this is where this information probably should have been talked about. What is the point of a DCC meeting if we're not going to use it for the vehicle of towns being open and honest with the school committee? Our books are open transparently, and that's what we should expect our towns to be open transparently to the town people as well as us.
So, I mean, I think that was part of the conversation that was in that meeting, because, you know, I had said, again, maybe standing alone in my personal world, that is, in my mind as well, what DCC is for. And, you know, I think it was Debbie made the comment, and she said, you know, this is only version 2. Select Board has not seen this yet. FinCom chair had seen it, I think, but it's not public information in Rowley yet either. You know, the other towns, I think, sometimes, like, Rowley's first FinCom meeting is coming next week, I believe. You know, Newbury had their first one on the 2nd. So it's just like where you're at in the process. And I understand not wanting to put out data that hasn't gone before your own boards yet, because we struggle with that sometimes. Although also I will say there are times where we say it should not come here first, right? When we get assessments, we do not schedule a meeting that night. We wait until the next night, so that unless you're going out and hunting the data on your own, the school committee and all of the people that come to that DCC, they're all hearing it at the same time. And I can say, like, that started when I was chair, and that was very intentional on my part. And Brian, thankfully, was of the same mindset, right? Because we were saying at that point, like, it's not just a school committee thing. Like, school committee should not be hearing this and then other people listening to the meeting and then having a discussion on it the next night. It should be everyone hearing it together, right? So there are times that we have data and it doesn't come here first.
The only thing I would add to that, Linda, to your question about towns and providing information, is that every town is run differently, okay? Salisbury and Newbury both have finance directors, I believe. We got the best of Rowley the other day because there was a lot of department heads there. They don't have a finance director. So I don't know if that impacts going forward how we're going to get the information. If maybe we ask, you know, Salisbury and Newbury finance directors to come to us and provide what we got from Rowley. I don't know, but it is helpful, and I thought the meeting was great on Monday.
Sorry. I was going to say, it's definitely helpful to have a greater level of understanding. I just wish I wasn't. It makes me very nervous being the messenger, right? Because I'm trying to process it at the same time as think about what I need to remember to bring back here. And I know I'm going to, like, it's a 2-hour meeting. Something's going to get missed. And I'm sure there's going to be a conversation that said, she didn't say this. And I'm going to say, like, it was a 2-hour meeting. I can't bring it back here.
And not only that, Raleigh wouldn't have been forthcoming with this information unless you had asked at the DCC meeting the other night.
I mean, again, to their credit, they did.
No, I understand that,
yes.
but the DCC is the vehicle to be open and honest. Two of our administrators, as well as two school committee members, shouldn't be hearing this information. It should be all of us hearing it at the same time.
Again, I don't want to disagree with you, Linda, but I just think that the purpose of DCC, and I haven't been recently, is kind of a 10,000-foot look on everything, policy, budget, and I don't consider these numbers to be the 10,000-foot view. This is in the weeds, and that's what we did, so.
I understand that, but I'm not going to belabor this because things just have to change.
If I could ask, like, for our purposes here, I think this is all enlightening. Was there any discussion about this particular budget and where things go from here? Because that's, I think, what weighs on us most importantly.
No, I wouldn't say specifically that, no, other than they're including our number in there and they're sort of trying to work their way back from that point. Now, I guess that's how I would characterize it. I don't think nobody was making judgments other than to say this is very, very difficult for Rowley to afford, right? Or simply cannot, they believe cannot afford.
But I think our budget was discussed because Brian was pointing out the number of positions that were being cut.
Oh, that's true.
So there wasn't a lot of, we didn't go into the budget a lot, but we said that we're making substantial cut, 27 between teachers and IAs, and that was brought up in the impact that was going to have on the delivery of the services. Again, we didn't belabor it, but Brian did make that clear.
I was going to say, it's kind of hard to lose in a 2-hour conversation, but it was, not a quorum of the school committee, not a quorum of the select board, and mostly staff, administrative staff, or district. And so I think there was a lot of good back and forth understanding the budget, but there wasn't a discussion like you would have or the select board would have in a decision-making way, because that wasn't the group as a whole. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions for Nerissa or Paul? I want to thank you guys for going to that meeting and thanking Rowley for putting the meeting together to have that discussion. So I'll open it for questions or comments about what Brian presented before we take a vote of what the high water mark is going to be.
I would just reiterate what I said last week is I have deep reservations about putting through a high water mark. I understand that there's the process that we go through, but these cuts are so extreme. And to put this through as a high water mark without having done any significant direct communication I think it's irresponsible. I don't think we should be doing this tonight.
So I just point out by our regional agreement, we have to have a tentative budget voted by February 15th. So that gives us not enough time to even post a second meeting and then have that number available. And then, right, I mean, maybe maybe that's on me and Linda, and we should have planned differently. We usually try and move it as close to that date as we can get it. But by the regional agreement,
I think we're going to have some very irate people when this word goes out, and I don't blame them.
Is the February 15th deadline legally binding, or is it something we can move? or it causes a lot?
I mean, the answer is, could one of the towns potentially sue us for not going by the regional agreement? Yes. Is this an issue that I think that they would do that over? Potentially not. But I also, I don't know, I'll reserve my personal judgment on that and just say I believe that it's the right thing to do it tonight. It is, essentially our promise. It is the thing also that allows us to communicate out this list. Because until we have a vote that says this is where we're standing, all it is guidance. And people can be upset. They're going to be upset both ways. I went on a half-an-hour trip to Market Basket the other night and spent almost, I don't know how long there, almost until they closed. Right? Because it's just, I understand that people have concerns, they want to know more, they have, both ways. And this is the thing that allows us to communicate out, is by having a vote. Because all we can say right now is we have this guidance that may be our tentative budget, it might not be our tentative budget. And at some point, I think you have to draw a line in the sand just to draw a line in the sand and say, this is where it is right now, give us feedback on this, not some amorphous thing that could change.
We have a regional agreement that we try to make sure that we follow, so that we're going by the rules that are set, because we could get in trouble if we don't follow the rules. And
Then I would advocate that if this has to be done tonight and it has to be the high water mark, it should be level services and not these cuts.
this is just me talking, and I want what's best for our students and our teachers. However, our job as school committee members is not only to make sure that we're educating the students of our schools, but also being mindful of the towns. But I would hope that the towns would be mindful that, I've said this before, that the students in these buildings are residents of their towns. And like Brett said, these are future leaders of our towns, future leaders, hopefully, of our country. Could be anything that they want, and that's exactly what we want them to be able to do.
And cuts can always come later. We can't go lower once we vote that. So if we vote tonight for this, that's it. That's as high as we can go. We could cut from the tentative budget, but we can't go higher by agreement. So if we do this, that's it. It's game over. If we go with level services, cuts can happen if they have to, but we don't tie ourselves into a corner, paint ourselves into a corner.
So I'd just like to ask how you believe you would communicate that to the public. Knowing that it's very unlikely that a final budget would be level services, how are you going to communicate to the public that they should provide feedback on a level services budget, not knowing where a level services tentative budget, not knowing where a final budget would likely go?
I don't understand your question.
Sure. So let's say you vote that tonight and Brian puts out a communication and says the tentative budget is, I don't know what the number is off the top of my head.
4.25.
There you go. So now what are they providing feedback on?
I think we don't just say that that's the tentative budget. I say we say these are the cuts that have been discussed, these are the cuts around the table, they have not been voted as a tentative budget yet.
This is procedural. Can someone walk me, Paul, can you walk, or someone, I don't care who, can you walk me through what you're saying? Like how, so my question is more, if that vote were to go to level services, what next? Just walk me through the process, because I don't know if I'm missing it, and I don't want to miss what you're saying.
I
want
think
to
the way
understand.
that this has come down is thoroughly I don't want to go that far. This is not your typical budget. This is not some cuts. This is not a little bit. This is drastic. And the people in our towns have heard nothing from us about that. Yes, we've had meetings, but we all know realistically it's very difficult, especially for the people most hit with children, to stay on top of that type of thing. To do this, for 9 people to sit here and decide that this is what's going to happen to our community without even having any semblance of an opportunity. If your message last Friday had been about this, do you think we'd have had the same number of people speaking tonight, or 5 times as many? I suspect the latter. I don't know.
I need the I'm stuck in the process, because what I don't want, right, is to go this way. I want to understand how that would will out, because in years past is willed out. Like, yes, we set the high water mark, we have the budget hearings, goes to the votes of the towns, and they either pass it by 2/3 or they don't. If we set it at level services, it follows the exact same process. What I don't want, and my fear is this, my fear is going through the school year knowing that towns could possibly or most likely not be able to afford level services, and more than 1, 2, or all 3. And then we're making those decisions much later in the school year, and those individuals impacted are now majorly, now they've been spoken to now, they can start making plans that are in the best interest of themselves and their families if we push this off. So my concern is, are we creating harm in waiting to do this, when the reality is, if you look at all 3 towns and their Board of Select meetings, their finance warrant advisories, they're saying, not to the degree that Raleigh is, right? Set this apart. But they're saying, you know, I shouldn't be referencing public comment, but Salisbury said they can back the budget that he was holding earlier this evening. That to me allows us to make plans in a thoughtful way. If we do a level services budget, could we still make those plans in a thoughtful way? That is my major concern.
Maybe we do harm. Maybe. This goes through, we do. We definitely do harm. I will take maybe.
I guess I understand where you're coming from, and I understand I understand the sentiments you're feeling. I guess I don't see a path forward doing that. And I understand you don't see a path forward not doing that. But, and all due respect as well, the superintendent, and I'll say this whole side of the table, including Foster, right? They're the ones that understand the impact. I know you're saying it's going to be dire. I'm hearing from the superintendent that some of this is right sizing, right? Is some of it going to be detrimental? Absolutely. Is some of it just we're shrinking, and in some schools, right?
I could push back on that, but we'd be here hours.
That's fair.
I could go on for hours over what this does to a staff.
I just would like to add that I was just going to say exactly what Narissa said, that I have a lot of faith in Brian Forget, okay, and his staff. And when I hear Brian say right sizing, okay, those are his words. And so I think it's time as a district we need to follow the superintendent with that description.
All of us, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Paul.
The superintendent has said some of this is right sizing, and when you look at the class sizes, yeah, some of it is right sizing, and some of it puts some of our grade levels higher than we typically see. I know there was a 25 in one of those elementary classrooms, and that's bigger than, I think maybe we've had one other classroom size that since I've been on the committee. But also we're losing IAs, and that some of that is right sizing and some of that is not. And I know that's going to mean consolidating students who are on IEPs and needing supports into fewer classrooms, which means larger concentrations in some classrooms and maybe non-existent in other classrooms, and that changes the dynamics. But the discussion we're having is, to me, like, our process, right? What's our process? And we've talked about this a couple of times this year. And when we get community input, and that's not really something that we've talked about as a committee and how it makes sense. I don't know when the last time we had that conversation, but we have to have a tentative budget, but we don't have to have a tentative budget that says this is the high water mark. We have to have a tentative budget. The high water mark is our conditional to the towns that this is as high as we're going to go, but it's not. That's not in the regional agreement. That's not statutory. We started the process with the principals coming to us and asking for what they think they need to make their schools better. And realistically, none of that is in here. That was, I don't remember the number, $5.5 million or something. And then we have a $4.2 million that's a level services, and maybe level services is a little fuzzy, so maybe it's more like 3.8 to provide the same services or something with the right sizing or whatever. And then we have this number 2.5, which is a combination of right sizing and cuts. And we have all of those numbers, and the only feedback we get is because we put out some information last week knowing what we're doing, but we are still 2 weeks away from when we're supposed to receive public comment on this, when we have our public forum. So, we have a tentative budget in front of us. I think it's lower than it should be for the best interests of our students, and probably also at the high end of what is doable for 2 of our 3 towns without an override. And by what Rowley sent us, even if we gave them a 0, they couldn't do it. So I don't know what to do with that.
Well, we have a motion to put on the table, and we'll see the will of the committee.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2027 tentative budget of $57,222,568, including both operating and capital debt costs, with a total operating expenditure of $56,957,374 and capital expenditure of $65,194, resulting in combined assessments to the communities of $46,260,883 to be apportioned per the regional agreement, and with the remaining balance of $10,961,685 being funded by other state and local revenues.
I will second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those against? So that will be the high water mark.
How do you count an abstention? I'm trying to remember back to my chair days. Or, sorry, not an abstention, an absence, because it's the people who are here and you need 2/3, I believe.
Is in 2 noes?
62, right?
That's 2/3, it's either way.
Next item.
Can I say one more thing real quick? I don't, because we don't have it on the agenda tonight, but I think it is closely tied. I just wanted to bring up some of the discussions we had about, at the workshop, just about regional agreements, because we have DCC tomorrow night, and that would be a time that we could have discussion as part of that budget discussion as well. Is just that I think, you know, I mean, I do sort of believe that finding an alternative assessment is like banging your head against a wall at this point. But at the same time, I think we have to keep trying because we only have so many things we can affect. And that's one of the few. And then I'll just echo what Paul Goldner said, that maybe we need to look at, you know, one of the struggles that we've had is sort of with smaller sections, numbers of sections in the grades at the elementary schools, seeing if there's a reconfiguration option between the elementary schools. It would require a change in the regional agreement because the regional agreement says that you have an elementary school in each town that the elementary students are from that town attend. I like, there are many things that I just don't have a lot of hope would come to fruition, but I think we have to look at every single one of them now. I don't think there are only so many things we can affect, right? And that's one that I think we just, even if the discussions come to nothing, I think we have to have the discussions. I don't know if it's the will of the committee to bring those to the DCC and say the committee feels this way, or if it's, you know, I mean, I can stand there as an individual person and say, I believe this is what something we have to do. You know, I just, we'll only have so many things that we can look at for options, and those are some of them, unfortunately. And to be fair, in a municipality, like when you look at Boston, they open and close schools, and it's because they have to, and that's part of how they can control those types of things to make a particular school effectively more efficient.
I think it's a way to communicate with the towns and think outside the box and be creative as to how we move forward.
I would agree it's time to maybe, I know, Narissa, you did a lot of work on that, and so I understand it might be a long shot, but looking at the last few conversations we've had in this room and in the workshop, now would be a really good time to get creative and start really looking at these things. I will not be at DCC tomorrow, but I would be willing to join anything that comes out of that, because I do think it's important that we move forward and try a different direction so that maybe next year's budget discussion can be at least moving forward and in a better path than where we are tonight. So our goal would be to every year get a little bit closer to being sustainable for all 3 towns. And I think it would be good to start now.
I mean, the reality is that we can request it. I think we can recommend it if the board wants to do that. We cannot drive it because the agreement is between the 3 towns and not, right? The regional district can be a facilitator, I guess, for some of that stuff, and definitely a depth of knowledge. I mean, we have 2 school business administrators, which is well, at least one more than many districts, sometimes two more than some districts. Right, but we, like, we can at least provide that wealth of knowledge, but I do have to say, like, it's a long game. You know, even if discussion started now, say that you could come to an agreement, you've got to go through DESI legal, right? Your earliest that you could probably have votes if it passed all 3 town meetings would be next spring, potentially. Even that's probably a long shot. Then it has to go and be signed by the DESI commissioner, and then it goes into effect the following July after that. So we'd be looking at summer 2028 at this point. And that's if things went so expeditiously. It's a long game, but I mean, there's just so many things that we can try and help ourselves with. And I think that's, you know, I think we could, I don't know how to think outside the box and come up with likely suspects, because we've looked at all the likely suspects already, right? And we've got to get down to the point where we're just saying, like, we're doing everything we can, and this is one of the things I think that we have to try, even if the odds aren't long, or are long.
Because I know at the meeting we discussed the school, the regional agreement, and also, you know, I know that Georgetown is looking to go somewhere. I'm not saying they should, but I mean, we should be, and the town should be exploring everything possible. So those were the things we discussed at our workshop, and maybe the towns have other ideas as well. But I think with the way we're declining, we need to come up with something.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it would be irresponsible not to have those conversations, because cuts or overrides, none of it is fixing any issues, really, or none of it's fixing the problem. And not just to say that there's a problem with the school or the towns, but there's definitely a problem with state aid when it's 17% and dropping. Are we under 17% this year? Just above? Oh, 17.5 still.
That's the legal base. We literally cannot go lower than that. Yes. So if we could go lower, we would be going lower, but the state put a cap in so that every community, because there were technically some communities that wouldn't receive any state aid at some point, and they put a cap in and said, you know, that the most an individual community could fund is 82.5%, which means that we get at least 17.5% state aid in the aggregate.
But I don't think we can rely on the state at all in the future. I know there's in the House or the Senate, there's talks about studying the Chapter 70 formula, but I doubt that I don't think anyone else is more optimistic that it helps us significantly at any point in the future. So I think these alternatives it's definitely important to have these conversations.
Even if they decided that, yes, they're going to change the way the formula is, it takes a long time for them to change it. However, one caveat is more and more districts are becoming hold harmless like we are. So more and more districts are complaining about the funding that's happening. So on March 5th, we're going to have all our 3 legislatures here, and hopefully they can give us some insight as to what's being worked on, or what it seems to be having traction.
I was going to say, I also don't have a date yet, but Project 211, which became Project 232, which is now Project 272, which is the number of districts in hold harmless in the Commonwealth. That there's a sort of coalition of associations that are working on that, and I understand that they're going to be hosting a call the first week of March, but I don't have a date or time yet. So that's something that we can definitely throw our weight behind. I may have offered us as the sacrificial lamb and said, we'll be your example. Like, if you want someone to splash across front pages, what do we have to lose at this point? Like, take us. right? And use us as an example if you need to, because you know.
I'm sorry, but I would like to make a motion to leave. I need to go do homework.
No. I'm kidding, Foster.
Thank you. No.
Absolutely, Foster. Because we don't want you to be tardy tomorrow.
1,182.
Yes, Foster, you don't want to be 1,882. Okay, moving on. The next item is 2026-2027 school year calendar. After a discussion at the January business meeting, the school committee requested the proposed calendar that's attached to the agenda. I'll open for any questions or comments from the members.
Can I make a motion to approve the school year calendar as presented as a first reading?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
The superintendent's scowling. Am I? The idea is a first reading?
Yeah. You want it as a final? That's fine.
Wow.
I can do that.
Do not play, you want to play poker with me tonight, apparently you'll get me cleaned. Yeah, so that's a question I was just going to ask. We've done it two ways. Last year, we were changing to Wednesdays, and so it came back as a second reading in March. We've historically approved it. The decision was, let's just keep it another year, no changes, Wednesday PD days. Starting before Labor Day, again, it's a late Labor Day, so this kicks us our last day out to the 17th or 24th of June for the 180th or 185th day. But people are already asking for it.
Sorry, I make a motion to approve the calendar as presented as a final reading.
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any? One abstained.
Paul
Did you
abstained?
vote? No, I voted. Yeah. Yeah, so I said one abstained.
Okay.
Okay. The next item is school choice participation. The school committee must annually vote on school choice. I'll ask the superintendent to provide a little background in his recommendation of the 2026-2027 school year.
So this is just an annual approval to participate in choice. I know we've been talking about school choice because we're seeing our numbers tick up. And so again, this gives me the ability to accept in the spring based on seats and availability. Obviously, if we are condensing classes, there is less availability. But am doing some breakdown of the students that are going out, and we had talked about the 78 students that are choicing out to Newburyport presently. So I certainly want to make sure our goal is to balance that off. It is not to be a revenue generating. It is to be a revenue neutral. It is to bring enough revenue to neutralize the students we are losing, and those numbers are increasing. So, there's nothing new in this vote other than keeping with the same process where you don't designate a set number of seats. It's simply voting that you have to vote whether or not you're going to participate. And again, we say this every year, you can only vote to participate in receiving. You can't say no if a student choices out.
I'll make a motion to approve Triton's participation in the Massachusetts School Choice Program for the 2026-2027 year, allowing the superintendent to accept new students as space permits, with a final determination made by the last day of school for the 2025-2026 school year in June of 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Subcommittee reports, policy and advocacy, Paul Goldner.
We met earlier today and discussed our advocacy around the building project. We meet next month on March 11th at 5:30.
Thank you, Paul. Personnel negotiations.
We met
Matthew.
yesterday, and we're meeting on Wednesday, the 25th, to continue working on the contracts.
Thank you, Matthew. Final Finance Subcommittee, Paul Mayette.
We haven't met since our last discussions here. Next meeting would be on the 26th.
Okay, just a reminder that tomorrow night is the DCC meeting here, and March 5th, it's in Salisbury.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Have a nice evening, and thank you all for coming.